She had no idea who he was. On that cold morning, all she saw was a man being humiliated, and she chose to stand up for him. With a look full of courage and a cup of tea in her hands, she offered something he had never received, not even at the height of his fortune, humanity. What Claire didn't know was that the homeless man was actually Nicholas Bennett, a billionaire running from scandals, from the weight of his own name, and from the pain of being forgotten by everyone. Yellow circle, but everything changed right there. In that simple gesture, a story was born that will touch your heart like few others. Sparkles if you believe in the power of love that starts where no one expects it. Subscribe to the channel right now, share this video with someone special, and help this story reach many hearts who, like yours, still believe in true love. Because today, you'll understand that sometimes the one who saves is also saved. Yellowheart. The cold wind sliced through the streets of Maplewood as the winter fair came alive in the town square. The small town looked like a Christmas painting, colorful lights, soft music, and the scent of hot chocolate in the air. In the middle of that cozy scene, Claire Thompson was arranging boxes of sweets at the church stand. Her hands were steady, her smile gentle, and her eyes saw far beyond appearances. That's when she saw a man being shoved away from the pie booth, mercilessly, in front of dozens of stares. He carried an old backpack and a worn cap, trying to disappear into the crowd. But what caught Claire's attention wasn't his state, it was his eyes. A lost, exhausted gaze, as if he carried the weight of the world on his shoulders. The laughter that followed the shove echoed loudly, and she felt ashamed that wasn't hers. A few young men mocked his clothes while others accused him of being there just to steal food. Claire dropped everything and walked toward him without hesitation. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice low but steady. He seemed confused by the question, as if he didn't know what to do with kindness. "You don't have to say anything. Just sit here for a bit," she offered, pulling a bench behind the stand. While others looked away, she handed him a cup of hot tea. She didn't ask his name. She just stayed by his side. The fair carried on, ignoring the two of them. But Claire remained alert. He looked hungry, yet hesitated to accept anything. When he finally bit into a piece of cake, something in him seemed to let go. "Thank you," he murmured, his voice hoarse. She just nodded. And for a moment, silence. The kind that connects people, that doesn't demand anything. Later, he left without saying who he was. But he left behind a napkin folded into the shape of a flower. Claire didn't know that simple gesture would change everything. With every sip of tea, he seemed to reconnect with reality. His hands trembled, and Claire noticed small cuts on his fingers, signs of someone not used to being cared for. "Would you like me to call someone to help?" she asked gently. He only shook his head no, his light eyes dropping to the ground. His discomfort was clear, but there was something else, a deep pain that had nothing to do with the cold. Claire didn't push. She knew how to recognize when someone needed presence, not questions. So, she simply waited, quietly, hoping he'd feel a little less alone. When the crowd thinned, Claire felt the curious stares of some passersby. "You're too kind to strangers, Claire," Jenna, her neighbor, said with a half-disapproving tone. Claire only shrugged. "It's not about being kind. It's about being human," she replied simply. Jenna sighed and returned to her scented candle booth. Claire stayed there, watching the man who hadn't said a word. He looked tired, but not dangerous. There was something in his posture, as if he were running from something no one else could see. Before leaving, he stood slowly, pulling up the hood of his worn coat. "Can I know your name?" Claire asked cautiously. He hesitated, as if that simple question was a wall too high to climb. "Nick," he finally said, almost in a whisper. The name sounded oddly strong, even spoken so softly. Claire smiled. "Nice to meet you, Nick. I hope to see you around again," she said, offering a piece of bread to take with him. He took it as if it were gold, nodded quickly, and disappeared into the fair's lights. As night fell and the booths began to close, Claire still wondered who that man was. Something about him didn't add up. His clothes, though worn, were of good quality. The way he spoke, or rather, how he avoided speaking, hinted at someone who wasn't unfamiliar with good manners. "Who are you, Nick?" she murmured to herself, placing the flower-shaped napkin in her apron pocket. "A tea home." Claire couldn't sleep. The scene of the public humiliation haunted her mind. She kept thinking about how a small town, despite its charm, could be cruel to those who didn't seem to belong. Claire knew that feeling. She'd faced those same stares and whispers when, at 17, she was left alone to raise her younger brother after her parents passed. The pain of being judged without being understood was a scar that never fully healed. Maybe that's why she had approached Nick. The soft crackling of the fireplace didn't quiet Claire's restless mind. She wondered if he had somewhere to sleep, if he was freezing on the streets. "Should I go look for him tomorrow?" she asked aloud, as if someone could hear. It was a wild idea, but something inside her said there was more to the story. Hey, strong intuition, and Claire had always trusted her intuition. Always. As she folded clean towels, her phone buzzed with a message from Jenna. "You're crazy, Claire. That man could be dangerous." Claire sighed, choosing not to reply. She knew her friend wasn't being mean, just cautious. But deep down, Claire felt something in Nick that no one else had seen. Something broken, but still deeply human. Sometimes, it's in someone's eyes that we discover who they really are, she thought, recalling the sadness shining in his gaze. The next morning, the town woke to a thin layer of snow and biting cold. Claire rose early to deliver fresh bread to the fair before it opened. Her heart raced as she looked around, hoping to see Nick. But he wasn't there. She wandered between the booths, scanning every face, every corner. Nothing. It was as if he'd vanished overnight. And that absence bothered her more than she wanted to admit. "Still thinking about that guy from yesterday?" Jenna asked, arms crossed as she caught Claire scanning the streets. "He seemed lost," Claire replied, unable to explain the feeling. Jenna rolled her eyes. "Or maybe he's just another problem. You can't save everyone." Claire didn't answer. Instead, she busied herself arranging the sweets, trying to convince herself not to care so much. But deep down, she knew. She was already involved. By noon, Claire overheard two men talking about a stranger who had slept on a bench at the train station. "Probably just another bum," one of them said, laughing. Anger rose in Claire's chest like fire. She hated that word, bum. They didn't know his story, yet they'd already passed judgment. Determined, she grabbed a bag of bread and a thermos of coffee. "Where are you going?" Jenna asked, puzzled. "I think I have something to deliver," Claire replied. The train station was a few blocks away, and the freezing wind stung her face as she walked. When she arrived, she saw a familiar silhouette sitting on the bench, hood pulled over his face. Nick was there, hugging his knees like he was trying to shield himself from the world. She approached slowly. "You shouldn't be out here. It's freezing," she said, offering him the coffee. He looked up slowly, surprised to see her. "Did you follow me?" he asked, guarded. "No. I just wanted to make sure you were okay," she said honestly. He glanced at the coffee, then at her, as if unsure whether he could trust it. But eventually, he took the thermos and sipped. "I'm not used to this," he muttered. "Used to what?" Claire asked. "To people caring," he replied. And hearing that made her chest tighten. They sat in silence for a while, watching. "The trains come and go. You don't have to tell me anything," she said gently. "But if you need a place to stay, I know a cheap boarding house nearby." Nick hesitated, as if accepting help was a burden. "I'll pay you back," he murmured. Claire smiled. "I'm not charging you." And for the first time, he smiled, barely, shyly, but it was enough to warm that cold morning. "Why do you do this?" he asked suddenly. "What?" she said. "Help someone you don't even know?" Claire thought for a moment. "Because someone once helped me, and it changed my life. I guess we have to give back somehow." He looked at her, trying to understand who she was. But there was something in the way she spoke that softened every wall. Claire walked with him to Mrs. Turner's boarding house, an elderly woman known for offering discounts to those going through hard times. "It's simple, but warm," Claire said, handing Nick the room key. He held it like it was something precious. I don't know how to thank you," he said, his eyes misty. Claire just smiled. "Just stay well. That's all." That night, back in her small apartment, Claire looked at the flower-shaped napkin he had left at the fair. She placed it on the table and stared at it for a long time. "Who are you, Nick?" she whispered. She didn't know it yet, but she was about to find out that this mysterious man carried secrets powerful enough to turn her whole world upside down. The sun hadn't yet warmed the snow-covered ground when Claire walked past Mrs. Turner's boarding house. She had woken early, her thoughts circling around one question. How was Nick? In her hands, She carried 2 loaves of bread wrapped in paper and a small jar of homemade jam. When she arrived, she was greeted with a warm smile from the elderly woman. "Oh, dear Claire, he's already gone." The words hit like a punch. "Gone?" she repeated, confused. "Yes, left early this morning. Left the room spotless. Didn't even stay for breakfast." Claire stood still for a moment, holding the bread as if it had lost all purpose. She couldn't explain why it hit her so hard, but it felt like a story had been cut short before it even began. "Did he say where he was going?" she asked. The woman only shook her head. "No, he seemed in a hurry, but it wasn't fear. It was decision." That choice of words echoed in Claire's mind as she slowly walked back home. Why would someone who had finally accepted help leave so soon? On her way, the town was already moving through its peaceful rhythm. Children heading to school, the scent of coffee drifting from bakeries, neighbors exchanging greetings with ease. But Claire felt something was out of place, as if she'd missed something important. She looked down each street corner, as if he might suddenly appear. "Why did I let myself care so much?" she whispered, clutching her coat to her chest. It wasn't romantic longing, it was connection. And that kind of bond, when it happens, is never easy to explain. When Claire arrived at the bakery where she worked, she found a note on the counter. The elegant handwriting made it clear it was from the owner, letting her know she'd be in. Later, alone there, Claire looked around the warmly lit space. Jars of sugar, aprons hanging on hooks. This place had always felt like a second home. But that morning, it felt strangely empty. So she did what she knew best. She put the kettle on and began to mix a cake batter. With her hands busy, her mind began to settle. Claire thought of Nick, of the layers behind that worn-out gaze, the calloused hands of someone who had once worked hard, yet now seemed lost. "Nick," she whispered. She had the feeling that name held more than it appeared. Maybe he'd run from something. Maybe he was searching for someone. Or maybe he had nothing, except the weight of a past he carried quietly in his coat pocket. When the store opened, Claire served the first customers with automatic warmth. But each time the door swung open, she turned too quickly, as if expecting to see him there, as if he'd walk in just to say thank you, or to pick up where they'd left off. But time passed, and he didn't return. The cake she had baked with care and nervous anticipation was sliced and served to others. The empty seat in the corner remained that way all day. During lunch, Claire sat with Jenna, who had stopped by for a bite. "He's gone, huh?" Jenna asked with a teasing tone. Claire nodded. "I shouldn't have gotten involved," she said quietly. Jenna took her hand. "Claire, that's who you are. You care. And that's not weakness." Her words warmed Claire's chest a little. Still, Nick's absence ached in a way she couldn't explain. Later, at the end of her shift, Claire stopped by the town library. She often did that to pick up books for her younger brother. While she waited, she noticed the local newspaper sitting on the counter. And in the bottom corner of the front page, a name caught her eye. Nicholas Bennett reappears after 3 years in seclusion. Claire's heart skipped. She grabbed the paper, scanning each line frantically. There it was, a photo of Nick, or rather, Nicholas. The man who had shared tea and bread with her, huddled on a bench at the fair, was the heir to one of the state's largest investment groups. The article explained how he had vanished after his mother's death and a family betrayal scandal, cutting ties with the company and the public. No one had known where he'd gone. Until now, Claire felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. "Nicholas Bennett," she repeated in shock. The man everyone had been searching for had been sitting beside her just the day before, with the newspaper trembling in her hands. Claire left the library without even realizing it. Each step felt heavier. She replayed every word he had said, every gesture. It all made sense now. The silence, the distant look, the way he hesitated before, accepting kindness. He wasn't just a stranger. He was someone hiding from the world. And she had offered him shelter without knowing who he truly was. Back at her apartment, Claire laid the newspaper on the table and sat on the couch, face in her hands. She felt as if she had touched something she wasn't supposed to. And yet, she also felt that what had happened was real. She hadn't treated him like a millionaire. She had treated him like a human being. And maybe that was exactly what he needed. The napkin flowers still sat on her table. And now she understood it had been a silent thank you from someone who didn't know how to express gratitude, but still wanted her to know The next day arrived with clear skies and quiet promises. Claire went to work, trying to focus, but the town was already buzzing. Did you hear the magnate's son was here and no one noticed? They say he was with a girl from town. Think he's going to sue someone? Gossip was inevitable. Jenna showed up early, eyes wide. He's Nicholas Bennett. Claire, my God, you had a millionaire at your stand. Claire looked at her calmly, without smiling. He wasn't a millionaire in that moment. He was just a tired man. Jenna blinked. And you didn't know? No. And even if I had, I would have done the same. That silenced her friend for a few seconds. Claire wasn't proud, nor did she regret anything. But something now hurt even more. The fact that Nicholas, had left without saying a word, as if afraid she might discover who he was. The hours dragged. The bakery was full, but Claire was distant. Near closing time, someone entered and left an envelope on the counter. When she turned around, no one was there, as if the messenger had vanished into thin air. With trembling hands, she opened the envelope. Inside was a small folded sheet of paper. Thank you for reminding me what it feels like to be seen without being judged. Tears welled in her eyes before she finished the line. She sat right there behind the counter, clutching the note as if it were fragile. He remembered her. He had come back. Maybe not to stay, but at least to leave a message. And for now, that was enough. It was the kind of gesture that said more than 1,000 words. A silent thank you. A promise. In the days that followed, Claire kept to her routine. But something inside her had shifted. She no longer turned every time the door opened. Instead, she tended to the flowers in the window, wrote kind notes on cake boxes, and smiled with her eyes more often. Nicholas wasn't there anymore, but the memory of what he stirred in her remained, as if he had opened a window into a part of her she didn't know still existed. She began to write letters she never sent. She told him about her day, her customers, new flavors, little joys, and big longings. It was her way of keeping alive something that maybe had only been a moment, or maybe the beginning of something greater. You don't need to know where he is, Claire. You just need to remember how you felt when he was next to you. She whispered to herself, like a quiet mantra. Meanwhile, in a luxury hotel in a nearby city, Nicholas read one of the letters she had left pinned to the tree in the town square. One of the old men from the plaza had told him she did that every Saturday, as if tossing words into the wind. He read each line carefully. He didn't know how to reach out again, not as Nicholas Bennett, but the man she had met maybe. He could return. That night, Claire looked up at the star-filled sky. Her little brother was already asleep, and the silence in the house was comforting. She wondered if Nick was okay, if he would come back. But there was a strange peace in not knowing. For the first time, she wasn't waiting for an ending. She simply hoped the story wasn't over yet. That life still had plans. Even when everything felt too quiet. And in a roadside cafe, a man in a worn cap ordered coffee. The server didn't recognize him, but he left a napkin on the counter, folded into the shape of a flower. And on the back, handwritten, sometimes, what changes a life isn't what you lose, it's who sees you when no one else is looking. Autumn advanced through the streets of Maplewood in golden tones, painting the trees with memories. Claire was sweeping the leaves in front of the bakery when she heard the familiar chime of the doorbell. Yes, we're open, just a minute, she called out without looking. But when she turned around, time stopped. Nick was standing there. Same reserved posture, eyes locked on her. But something was different. He no longer looked lost. He looked resolute. Hi, he simply said. And everything inside her scrambled. For a moment, Claire didn't know what to say. Her heart was pounding far too hard. You came back? She asked, her voice lower than she'd intended. He nodded, taking off his cap. I did. Silence. He looked nervous, but didn't look away. May I come in? He asked, and she stepped aside without a word. Something was hanging in the air, thick, tense, but full of meaning. As if questions were colliding inside them both. Claire closed the door, still feeling the world spinning slowly. Would you like some tea? She asked, trying to keep her hands busy. Only if it's that clove one, he replied with a half smile. She nodded and went to the counter. While preparing it, she felt his eyes on her every move. That presence, once absence, now filled the room with a silent force. He wasn't just a stranger anymore, but he wasn't someone familiar either. He was both at once. When she served the cup, she sat across from him cautiously. Why did you come back? she asked bluntly. Nicholas took a deep breath. Because leaving didn't take you out of here. He pointed to his chest. Because I've never been treated like someone real until you saw me. Claire looked away, trying to contain the whirlwind those words unleashed. You lied to me, she said softly. I hid who I was, but I never lied about what I felt. She looked at him seriously. And what did you feel, Nicholas? The full name hung heavy between them. He took his time to respond. Peace. For the first time in years, I felt seen, without wearing a mask. And that scared me more than any betrayal. Claire listened in silence. His words weren't rehearsed. They were bare, real. And perhaps that's why they were so hard to digest. Do you have any idea how much this turned my life upside down? She said, almost as a confession. Everyone looks at me differently now. They think I'm hiding something or involved in something big. And I don't even know who you really are. Nicholas lowered his eyes. I get it. Claire exhaled. Deeply. No, you understand your world. I live in another. And between us, there's a canyon. Her honesty cut like a knife, but she couldn't pretend nothing had changed. I didn't come to ask for forgiveness. I came to say I want to be part of your world. But the right way, he said. Claire crossed her arms. And what does right mean to you? Earning your trust slowly. Not with money, not with promises, but with presence. The word echoed deep within her. She knew the weight it carried. Presence. Something far more valuable than any title. The bakery bell rang again as a customer walked in, cutting their conversation short. Claire smiled automatically, handed over a cupcake with kindness. Nicholas watched in silence, as if trying to memorize her every gesture. When the customer left, Claire sat again, her eyes calmer. If you want to start from scratch, then you'll have to come here every day. Buy cake like everyone else. He smiled. I'd consider that a privilege. In the following days, Nicholas returned to the bakery daily. He came early, always ordered the same cake, and sat in the same chair. He never forced conversation. He just stayed, reading or watching the flow of people. Sometimes they exchanged a few words. Other times, no words were needed. But Claire noticed something new within herself, a kind of care growing slowly, with deep roots that, of course, the town wouldn't stop talking. But Nicholas seemed oblivious to the whispers. It was as if he had decided the only thing that mattered was being near her. Jenna, once skeptical, now watched with curiosity. I think he's really trying, Claire. She would nod, but avoided building hope. She knew the danger of expecting too much from someone who had everything, except simplicity. One afternoon, while organizing cupcakes, Claire dropped a tray. Nicholas bent to help, and their fingers touched. The contact was brief, but it lit something between them. She looked away, and he didn't push. But in that moment, more was said than in any conversation. It was the memory of a connection still pulsing. The silent tension between them now had color, shape, the scent of warm cake and sugar in the air. One Saturday, the bakery was packed for a local recipe contest. Claire was nervous. It was her first time entering with her own dish. Nicholas stayed outside, watching everything. When they announced that the lemon cake with honey glaze had won, he was the first to applaud. Claire blushed. That small victory meant so much. And knowing he was there made it even more special. After the contest, Nicholas waited for her in the square. It was cold, but he seemed willing to wait however long it took. Congratulations. That was the best cake I've ever had. She smiled, sitting beside him. Thanks. A comfortable silence followed. After a few minutes, he said, You know, I could buy the largest bakery chain in the country, but I don't think I'd ever feel the peace I felt eating that first slice back at the market. Claire looked at him tenderly. Peace isn't in the walls of an empire, Nicholas. It's in the eyes of those you respect. He bowed his head, moved by her words. I'm trying to learn that from you. She sighed. Then stop trying to be someone. And just be. The cold was settling in, but neither wanted to leave. Night fell slowly, and the sky was the kind only small towns see, full of stars and silence. They walked together to the bakery's corner. Good night, Claire, he said, with a restrained smile. Good night, Nick. She used the nickname as a gesture of closeness, and he noticed. Before leaving, he placed a small envelope in her hands. Claire waited until he was gone to open it. Inside, a hand-drawn sketch, the napkin flower, now with growing roots around it. And beside it, the words, This is how you made me feel, grounded. Claire tucked the note into her apron and looked up at the sky. She felt that trust had begun. Slowly, cautiously, but real. Not in the name he carried, but in the actions she now witnessed. It was like watching a tree come back to life in winter. Slow, silent, but true. And that meant more than any rushed words. Claire knew it. The next day, Nicholas showed up with a simple box in his hands. "What's this?" she asked. "My attempt at baking bread. Please don't laugh." Claire laughed, of course. The bread was lopsided, a bit burnt, but it smelled of real effort. They sat in the back of the shop and shared the bread with tea. A simple gesture. But for both, it felt like a feast. For the first time, Claire told him about her parents. About raising her little brother alone. About sleepless nights and debts paid with courage. Nicholas listened without interrupting. He just looked at her with a mixture of admiration and guilt. "I've lived in a world where everything is bought. You live in one where everything is earned. I want to learn from you, Claire, even if it takes a lifetime." She held the teacup tightly, trying to keep her emotions at bay. "Then stop saying what you want, and show it." He nodded. Her words were never harsh, but they always carried weight. A weight he was finally ready to carry. That afternoon, Nicholas cleaned tables, swept the floor, and washed trays with her. And in the end, he laughed, for the first time. Like someone relearning how to live. He dried his hands, and Claire closed the shop. They looked at each other a little longer. No promises, no declarations, but something stronger, constancy. And in that silence full of meaning, the possibility of something true was born. A new beginning, a new chapter, for both. The routine was gently reshaping itself around the silent mornings at the bakery. Nicholas arrived at 8 sharp, helped with chores, wiped the counter, and tasted the cakes like a sacred ritual. But beneath the simple gestures, Claire noticed layers yet to be revealed. There was a certain silence in his gaze, as if he carried a truth ready to burst. And she could feel it, by instinct, that something still held him back. Fear, doubt, or maybe the past. That on a gray Tuesday, the weather seemed to echo Claire's restlessness. Jenna mentioned a financial magazine cover circulating in town. Renegade heir of Bennett Corporation spotted in small-town retreat. Claire felt a chill. "They're writing about him again," Jenna muttered, frowning. "You need to protect yourself, Claire. When people like him resurface, scandal usually follows." But Claire didn't reply. She just looked out the window, where Nicholas was sweeping leaves in silence. That night, after closing the shop, Claire and Nicholas sat by the fireplace in the back of the bakery. "Did you see the magazine?" she asked, no filters. He nodded. "I knew it would happen. They were just waiting for an opening." She leaned forward, eyes fixed on him. "Then tell me. Everything. From the beginning." He took a deep breath, like someone diving into unknown depths. "My father was obsessed with appearances. My mother just faded into the background. When she got sick, no one knew. She died alone in a hospital ward while he was on a business trip, and I only found out the next day. I blamed myself for years for not being there." Claire could hear the ache in his words. When it all came out, the press made a show of it. They said she died from depression. But I know, she was just forgotten. He rubbed his hands, trying to contain the anger. "I broke ties with everything. I ran away, left the company, the shareholders, the city. Spent 3 years hiding, drifting from place to place where no one knew my name." Claire listened in. Silence, each word falling like a confession. "And then that fair." He chuckled softly. "You didn't ask who I was. Didn't care where I came from. You just saw me." Claire gripped her teacup tighter. "You were shattered, Nicholas. But you weren't the only one. A lot of people are broken out there. The difference is, you have a choice." He looked at her, surprised by the sharpness of her words. "And I'm choosing to stay," he said. "But are you ready to face what comes with that?" Claire challenged. "Because if this is just about me, you'll leave the next time it hurts." He stayed silent for long moments. "I'm not here just for you. I'm here because I want to find myself again." She nodded. That's what she needed to hear. Because real love begins where illusions end, and the real fight starts. "Then promise me one thing, Nicholas." He looked up. "Don't disappear again." He smiled with sorrow. "Even if I wanted to, I couldn't." The next morning, the bakery opened to a flurry of activity. A local news team came to film a piece on charming small-town businesses. Claire hesitated but agreed. Nicholas stayed in the background, cleaning and washing dishes. But during filming, One of the journalists recognized him. "Aren't you Nicholas Bennett?" The room fell silent. Claire froze. Nicholas simply nodded. "What are you doing here, Mr. Bennett?" The reporter pressed. Nicholas glanced at Claire, then at the camera. "I'm trying to learn the value of what can't be bought." And he walked out through the back door. Claire stood still, her heart racing. But something about his answer touched everyone deeply. The segment aired, and soon the bakery was flooded with curious visitors, reporters, opportunists, and customers who just wanted to taste the cake that changed a millionaire. Claire was overwhelmed but stayed calm. Nicholas, however, vanished for 2 days. No message, no napkin flour, nothing. Jenna huffed. "Told you." He couldn't take the pressure. When things get real, they bolt. But Claire didn't want to believe it. Something inside her whispered that this wasn't cowardice, it was protection. Still, the silence hurt in a new way now that on the morning of the 3rd day, Claire found a note taped to the back door. "Went to settle something from the past. I'll be back by the end of the week. Trust me, just one more time." She closed her eyes, pressing the paper to her chest. "It's okay," she whispered to herself. But her heart didn't believe it. Because trust, after so much absence, was an act of both faith and fear. While Nicholas was away, the bakery received a franchise offer. "You could expand, open locations, get famous," the rep beamed. Claire just smiled. "And lose everything that makes this place what it is?" She replied. The man didn't understand. But Claire did. It wasn't about money. It was about purpose. And above all, about who you become while baking at 7 a.m. for someone who chose to stay. When Nicholas returned, something had changed. He looked calmer, lighter. "I confronted my father," he said as he walked in. Claire dropped her cup. "What?" "I went to him. Told him I don't want part of the company anymore. But I do want to use my name to build something meaningful." She stared, letting every word sink in. "But this time, with you knowing everything. No more masks." Claire stepped closer, slowly. "Are you sure about this?" "More than I've ever been." He held out his hand, not just a gesture, but a truth. She took it, firmly, and said, "Then from now on, we walk together, but slowly." He smiled. "Slow is the only pace I've learned from you." In the days that followed, Nicholas began receiving fewer suspicious glances. The townspeople were slowly realizing that the man in simple clothes was more than a headline. He was someone who, despite being able to live anywhere in the world, chose to be there, helping mix batter, taking orders, sweeping the floor. Not to prove a point, but because he had finally found peace. And Claire, she no longer carried so much weight on her shoulders. There were still doubts, fears, scars. But something new was blooming. A love not built on grand promises, but on consistency and small gestures. Sometimes, just seeing Nicholas brewing coffee with his sleeves rolled up made her smile to herself. Because that's where the extraordinary hid. Inside the everyday point one night, Nicholas took her to the square, where it all began. The benches were empty, and the breeze was gentle. He pulled a napkin from his pocket and began folding. Claire laughed. "You and your origami." He smiled back. "It's just my way of saying what words can't." He handed her the flower, this time with a signature. She opened the napkin and saw, in cursive, "You saved me." With cake, silence, and courage. "Now let me take care of you too." Claire's eyes welled with tears. "Taking care of me doesn't mean shielding me from the world, Nicholas. It means walking beside me through it." He nodded. "And I want to be by your side, even when you burn the cake." She laughed, loudly. The square was no longer a memory of pain. It had become a symbol of new beginnings. Of someone who fell, was seen, and chose to stay. The two of them walked back to the bakery, where the light was still on. In the window, Jenna had hung a makeshift sign. "Here, the sugar is real, and so is the love." Nicholas looked at the sign, then at Claire. "I think that's the best summary of our story so far." She smiled through tears. "And the best part? We're still in the middle of the chapter." He held her hand tightly, and for the first time, she wasn't afraid to be held. The sound of light rain trickling down the bakery windows contrasted with the warmth of the kitchen, where Claire and Nicholas were preparing batches for the weekend's community fair. His hands, once trembling when holding a spatula, now moved with confidence. Between recipes and laughter, there was a new lightness in the air, as if life had finally found the right rhythm. but the insistent ring of the bell shattered that peace. Claire wiped her hands and opened the door. The woman in a beige coat and high heels looked out of place in that setting. "Sorry, are you open for customers right now?" she asked with a polite smile. Claire nodded, though wary of the unexpected visitor. "Are you Claire Thompson?" The question made her tense. "Yes. Can I help you?" "My name is Vanessa. I'm Nicholas Bennett's ex-fiancée." The world seemed to freeze for a second. Claire felt the ground vanish, but kept her gaze steady. "Is he here?" Vanessa insisted. "Yes. You can come in." Nicholas heard her voice and froze. He turned slowly, eyes locking with Vanessa's. "What are you doing here?" he asked, tense. She smiled, as if she knew exactly the effect she had. "Did you really think you could disappear for 3 years and no one would come looking?" Claire stood at a distance, heart racing. She felt like a stranger in her own life. And yet, she couldn't walk away. She needed to hear, "I'm not here to cause trouble, Nicholas. I just want to talk. We talked enough in the past." Vanessa stepped closer. "You ran away, and I deserve to know why." Claire gripped the dish towel tightly. She wanted not to care, but something about that woman deeply unsettled her. The confidence, the intimacy, the past she didn't know, now invading her bakery like an unwanted storm. Nicholas took a deep breath. "Vanessa, I did love you, but what we had was built in the world I left behind. That died with my mother." Vanessa's expression hardened. "You're still wounded, I get it. But running isn't healing." Claire quietly moved to the back, but she still heard Vanessa say, "I want you back. We can start over." His silence was worse than any answer. After what felt like endless seconds, Nicholas said, "I already started over." Vanessa stared, surprised. "With her?" she asked, glancing toward Claire. "With myself." For the first time, the air grew so tense it could be sliced. Vanessa composed herself, grabbed her purse, and headed for the door. "This isn't over, Nicholas. One day, you'll remember who you really are." And she left without looking back. Claire was still in the back when Nicholas appeared. "I'm sorry about that," he said, voice weary. She looked at him. "She still seems very present in your story." Nicholas nodded. "Because she represents everything I was forced to be. But with you, I choose who I want to become." Claire didn't respond right away. The insecurity she worked so hard to hide now slipped through each breath. "Are you really ready to give it all up?" she asked. "I already have. Only the remnants remain. And today they showed up at our door." She looked him in the eyes. "And if she doesn't give up, then I'll keep saying no until my choice is clear to everyone." Claire crossed her arms, trying to contain the storm within. "I just don't want to be someone's escape from themselves." Nicholas stepped closer. "You're not my escape. You're my safe harbor." In the days that followed, the whole town seemed to know about Vanessa's visit. Comments spread like weeds. "She's very pretty, huh?" they whispered. "Do you really think he'll stay with the bakery girl?" Claire tried to ignore it, but the words stung. At night, she wrote letters she couldn't give him. "If you go back to her, just say so," she once wrote. But she never had the courage to hand it over. Nicholas noticed Claire's subtle distancing. She didn't smile as much, didn't allow spontaneous touches. One night, she left a note on the counter. "I won't compete with a past that hasn't ended. Just let me know when it finally leaves your doorstep." Nicholas read the paper in silence. He knew he needed more than words. He needed action. On Saturday, at the community bazaar, Claire arrived alone. Nicholas didn't show. She masked the emptiness with smiles and slices of cake, but Jenna could see through it. "You're waiting for him, aren't you?" No, but her eyes said otherwise. As the event neared its end, Nicholas arrived. Simple clothes, determined expression. "Can I say a few words?" he asked the host. He stepped onto the small makeshift stage and took a deep breath. "My name is Nicholas Bennett," he began. "And maybe you know me from headlines or rumors. But I'm here as a man, as someone who fell and was lifted by this town, and by one woman." Claire watched with teary eyes. She didn't ask about my bank account. She asked if I wanted tea. And in that moment, I started to believe I could be someone real. The plaza fell silent. His words cut through layers of doubt. "I'm here to stay, not because I have nowhere else to go, but because I choose to be where I'm truly seen." Then he looked directly at Claire. "And if you still let me, I want to keep showing up, even when the world out there tells me to vanish." The emotion was instant. Applause, smiles, and quiet tears. After the speech, Nicholas stepped down and walked to her. Was that real? Claire asked. He smiled. With you, everything has been. She didn't answer with words. She just held his hand. And in that gesture, there was a reconciliation that needed no promises. Only presence. Eye to eye. A firm grip. That night, Nicholas showed up on Claire's porch with a box. Inside were all his signed Bennett Corporation documents. His resignation, his formal departure. You gave it all up. No. I'm making space to build something new. Something ours. Claire touched the papers gently. And what comes next? Now we learn to live without a script. They began walking the quiet town streets, side by side. Nicholas pointed to an old house for sale. I was thinking of turning that into a creative space. Not an empire, just a meeting place. Claire smiled. No logos, no branded names. Just a place where people can come and be who they are. She nodded. If it's like that, I'm in. In the following days, they worked on the project together. Painting, cleaning, planting. Slowly, the townspeople came closer. Children left drawings. Elders brought old recipes. Local musicians played at sunset. It wasn't a foundation or a business. It was just a place with soul. And in it, Nicholas found a new sense of home. One afternoon, Claire found Nicholas reading quietly, surrounded by children. He read aloud slowly, listening to each question. She was moved. You didn't run from your past, Nick. You transformed it. He looked at her tenderly. I only could, because you saw me before I could see myself. She came closer and, among the children's laughter, kissed him softly. A kiss full of time, truth, and belonging. As night fell, they lit string lights around the old porch. Claire hung a handmade sign by the door. Here, you're welcome, with your scars, your stories, and your truth. Nicholas watched in silence. It's the most beautiful place I've ever seen. Claire laughed. It's just a beginning. But with you, every beginning feels like a happy ending. And so, under soft lights and the smell of cake in the air, Claire and Nicholas discovered that sometimes the past doesn't need to be buried. It just needs to be heard and transformed. Because when love is real, it doesn't erase what was, it teaches you how to rewrite it. Together, mornings in Maplewood felt lighter since Nicholas and Claire's project began to blossom. The once abandoned mansion was slowly filled with color through every gesture from the community. It was as if the cracks in the soul were also being filled with meaning. But peace, as always, never came without a test. On a stormy afternoon, a black SUV parked in front of the space. Claire watched through the window. 3 men in suits stepped out, holding folders and cold stares. She knew in that moment, the corporate past had returned. Nicholas was organizing donation boxes when he saw the visitors. He straightened, wiped his hands on a rag, and walked toward them. You can talk to me. The oldest man opened the folder. We're here on behalf of Bennett Corporation. Your father is hospitalized and wishes to see you. Nicholas frowned. Why now? Because he has no one else. Silence fell like an avalanche. Claire stepped closer, her eyes sharp. What exactly does he want? Nicholas asked firmly. He wants to talk. Family matters. And about your seat on the board, which, legally, is still yours. Claire noticed the tension in Nicholas's jaw. And if I refuse? He may declare you absent due to abandonment and transfer your share to external shareholders. Nicholas took a deep breath. He never cared about what I wanted, only about what I represented. The men exchanged glances. Think carefully. This isn't just about you. After they left, Claire found Nicholas sitting out back, staring blankly. Are you okay? She asked gently. He didn't respond right away. It's like every time I try to build something, my name pulls me back. Claire sat beside him. You're not your name, Nick. You're your choices. And so far, your choices have been beautiful. He gave a small, crooked smile. How long can I hold that up? As long as you want to. And if you decide to, go, I'll understand. But if you stay, I'll be here too. He touched her hand gently. I don't want to lose you, Claire. Then don't disappear. Just be honest. She held his gaze. If you need to leave, go. But tell me. Because what hurts the most is being left in the dark. Nicholas nodded slowly. I promise. That night, Nicholas wrote a letter. Not to Claire, but to his father. A firm message, full of long unspoken truths, and a kind of forgiveness that didn't beg for apologies, just closed a chapter. He sent it by courier and didn't wait for a reply. He wanted peace, not An empty reconciliation. When he told Claire, she simply smiled. That was brave. He exhaled. It hurt. Then it was the right thing. The next day, the space welcomed more people than usual. A group of teens from a nearby town asked to perform a play in the backyard. Claire organized it with care. Nicholas helped, but he was more introspective than usual. The executive's presence still echoed within him. It felt like his buried childhood was knocking again, demanding to be heard. Do you want to talk about it? Claire asked at the end of the day. Maybe tomorrow, he said, but the next day, Nicholas didn't show up. Claire noticed immediately. She called, texted. No reply. Panic began to rise. Not again, she murmured. Jenna tried to reassure her. Maybe he just needed some time. But Claire knew that silence. It was the same one from when he left the boarding house. The same as before the flower on the napkin. Silence with weight, with distance, and with fear that on the third morning, Claire received a letter. It was his handwriting. With trembling hands, she opened the envelope. I want to see my father. I thought I needed to look him in the eyes in order to move forward. I don't know how long I'll be gone, but I'm writing now to keep my promise, to not leave you in the dark. I'll return when I've finished what I started. N. She breathed deeply. It was a different kind of pain, but this time, there was light. Claire carried on with her routine, keeping the space alive. People asked about him. She smiled gently and said, he'll be back. Deep down, she repeated that to herself too. Some nights, she sat on the porch with a cup of tea and watched the street, like someone waiting without waiting. It wasn't absence that hurt. It was a longing paired with hope, a kind of feeling that taught patience. When Nicholas returned, he looked different. Thinner, tired eyes, but peace in his posture. Did he apologize? Claire asked. No, but he listened. For the first time. She nodded. And now I've chosen again. And it's still you. Claire smiled. Then stay this time. Only if you want me to. She didn't hesitate. Since that first cup of tea, Nicholas moved into the back room of the space. It wasn't a practical decision. It was symbolic. He wanted to build from scratch with his own hands. Claire helped with the final renovations, and at night, they sometimes wrote loving messages on the chalkboard by the door. Love is made by those who stay, even when leaving seems easier. Visitors started responding. Anonymous notes, kids, drawings, silent smiles. But the story wasn't sealed just yet. A headline broke in the media. Nicholas Bennett gives up inheritance and officially cuts ties with family company. The story spread. Reporters came back. Claire, now stronger, answered calmly. He didn't lose anything. He simply chose. And when asked if she feared being left behind, she responded confidently. True love doesn't chain. It stays, even when it could leave. That interview went viral. People from other cities began visiting the space. But instead of shallow fame, what grew there was truth, was presence. Nicholas gave writing workshops. Claire taught simple recipes. And together, they learned how to live without proving anything to anyone. They simply were. And that was enough that on a sunny Sunday, Nicholas prepared breakfast on the porch. Claire woke up to the smell of bread and fresh flowers. On the table, a note. Do you still feel it? She smiled, recognizing the same phrase from the first. Napkin. Beside it, there he was, kneeling. No ring, no jewelry, no luxury. Just him. Real. I have no promises. Only choices. Every day. And today, I choose you. Claire knelt too, eyes glistening. And I choose to stay. They embraced. With no audience, no applause. Just the certainty that love was this. Constancy, listening, truth. Church bells rang in the distance. Flowers swayed with the wind. And time, for the first time in a long while, seemed unrushed. Later, Nicholas hung a new sign at the entrance of the space. It's not about where you arrived. It's about who you became along the way. Claire, standing beside him, added a line. And who chose to walk with you, even afraid. They looked at each other, hands intertwined, smiling with the lightness of those who have cried enough, and now understand the value of each laugh. The neighborhood boy ran to them with a gift, a drawing of the bakery with hearts and stars. It's for you, because this is where love lives. Nicholas knelt down, deeply moved. Thank you, buddy. And for the first time, he understood that belonging was this. Being remembered not by your last name, but by what you helped grow in others. That night, they sat on the porch steps. They didn't say much. They just leaned into each other. The full moon lit the freshly planted garden. "Are you afraid of losing all this?" Claire asked. "Of course, but I'm more afraid of not living it because of fear." She nodded. "Then let's live, even afraid, one day at a time." And so, under warm lights, the smell of bread, and handwritten letters hung on twine, Nicholas and Claire learned that the price of staying was the courage not to run, to face ghosts, to say yes, and to remain, even when leaving seemed easier. The days in Maplewood now seemed to move in harmony with them. The old restored house had become more than a gathering space. It was a refuge. Flowers adorned the windows, handwritten notes hung from neighbors, and soft laughter filled the air like a gentle soundtrack. But what stood out most was the silence between Claire and Nicholas. A comfortable silence, full of meaning. They didn't need many words. Just a glance, a gentle touch, and the world found its place again. That's where love lived, in the pause between words. That on a cloudy morning, Claire walked into the room with a basket of bread and found Nicholas sitting with an elderly man from town, exchanging memories. The man said that as a child, he had nowhere to play. Nicholas listened with rare attention, as if he understood that listening was an act of love. After a while, the man left smiling, grateful. He just needed someone to hear his story, Nicholas said. Claire nodded, touched. Everyone carries a story stuck inside. You've learned how to hear them. Over time, the space became home to silent gatherings. People came not just for events, but to simply exist. Children drew. Teens wrote anonymous letters of release. The elderly shared secrets buried for decades. Claire organized everything with steady hands and an open heart. Nicholas handled the technical details, but kept his eyes on the small gestures. It was as if he'd finally learned that the world transforms in the in-between, not in speeches. Point 1. Night. Claire woke to the sound of rain and noticed Nicholas wasn't in bed. She found him on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the dark sky. "Everything okay?" she whispered. He smiled, tired. "Today's the anniversary of my mother's death." Claire sat beside him. She said nothing, just stayed. After a few minutes, he spoke again. "Did you know she used to bake her bread just for me?" It was the only time she was just a mom. Not a wife, not an executive, just a mom. Claire gently took his hand. "Want to try baking that bread tomorrow?" "I'd love that." The next morning, they dug the recipe out of his memory. They mixed the ingredients with laughter, flour on their faces, and longing. In their fingers, the scent of bread drifted into the street, drawing curious neighbors. When they pulled the first loaf from the oven, Nicholas cried silently. This smell, it's like coming home to a place that never really existed. Throughout the week, Nicholas began writing memories. Simple, intimate texts. Claire read a few in secret, deeply moved. One passage read, "I thought I needed the world to be someone, but all it took was a woman and a market bench to relearn what love is." She didn't comment, but that night, she brewed clove tea, placed his note beside it, and folded a flower from a napkin. And in that simplicity, he knew. She felt the same. In spring, they organized a picnic in the town square. Nothing grand, just blankets on the grass, fresh juice, and soft music played by local students. Claire watched the details like someone admiring a living painting. Nicholas, more reserved, helped behind the scenes, until an old lady pulled him by the hand. "Come dance with your girl." He hesitated, shy, but Claire smiled and held out her hand. "Shall we?" And to the tune of a slow, sweet song, they danced there, between laughter and the golden sunset. Photos from that day ended up in the local newspaper. The billionaire who traded money for hugs. Nicholas didn't care much for headlines, but he smiled when he read the online comments. He looks happy, truly happy. That was it. It wasn't about proving anything anymore. It was about living and loving, in silence, in constancy, without needing to explain why. One day, a young woman approached Claire. Her eyes were red, and she held an envelope. "I read one of his writings, and it made me write for the first time in months." Claire smiled, moved. "Can I give it to him?" "Yes, but tell him he saved someone without knowing it." Claire gave Nicholas the envelope. He read it silently for a long time. Sometimes that's all we need, right? To be reminded we matter. And they did. Day by day, Nicholas and Claire touched lives with small gestures. An afternoon cup of tea, a kind word about a child's drawing, a letter answered with care. Their space didn't sell anything, but it healed. And while the world rushed outside, time walked gently within. Because where love lives in silence, there's no hurry. Only presence. On a cold night, Nicholas picked up a notebook and wrote a list of everything he had learned beside her. First item, loving isn't saving, it's staying. Second, listening is worth more than arguing. Third, warm cake heals more than advice. Claire read it without him noticing. She smiled and added at the bottom, and napkin, flowers say more than promises. One Sunday, Nicholas took Claire on a drive outside town. They stopped in an open field where he had secretly planted daisies weeks earlier. Just to remind you that you made bloom what I thought was dead. Claire was speechless. She simply hugged him tightly. The silence between them said more than any declaration, because there was love there. Love that knew how to wait. Love that knew how to stay. Time passed, and the space became a landmark. Go to Claire and Nicholas's place, people said, but they didn't care about fame, only meaning. Each new story welcomed there was a reminder, shared pain hurts less. And life, when shared, becomes healing. I never imagined I could be happy without a company, a title, he said one night. And now I am whole. Claire moved through it all with grace. She didn't demand, didn't push, just watched with affection, fixed details, taught recipes, organized notes, like a silent conductor of a place where love was expressed in the smallest gestures. One day a customer asked, "Are you two married?" Claire smiled. "Not on paper yet, but our routines have been holding hands for a long time." One pink-skied afternoon, Claire collapsed onto a garden bench, exhausted after a long day. Nicholas appeared with 2 cups of tea and sat beside her. He said nothing, just rested his head on hers. They stayed that way for minutes, breathing together. Silence, peace, presence. She closed her eyes and thought, this is it. This is where love lives. Days later, Nicholas surprised Claire with a small backyard gathering. Only their closest friends. At the end of the night, he pulled out a simple wooden box and knelt down. "I have no speeches. Just a question. Will you marry me?" Claire laughed and cried at the same time. "You took long enough." And her yes came before any hesitation. Not from impulse, but from certainty. Because when love is presence, the rest simply happens. The wedding took place in the very square where they met. No luxury, just simple flowers, white chairs, and soft guitar music. Vows were exchanged beneath a blooming tree. Nicholas said, "You taught me that being a man means having the courage to stay." Claire replied, "And you showed me that. Love is built when no one else is watching." The whole town clapped, cried, and believed in love once again. On their wedding night, there was no glamour. Just the two of them, laughing, tired, lying on a mattress in the freshly cleaned space. They ate buttered bread and drank tea. Nicholas held her hand. "I promise to keep choosing you, even on the days when life feels hard." Claire smiled. "And I promise to keep putting too much sugar in the cake, because I know you don't like it, but you always eat it anyway." Time would go on. Challenges would come. Fatigue. Old fears. But they knew where to anchor themselves. They knew how to start over, because they had found each other in pain and built love in silence, in brewed coffee, in anonymous notes, in napkin flowers, in gestures. And so they went on, one day at a time, knowing that home was there, where they were fully seen and fully accepted. And in that simple place, where love lived in silence, Nicholas and Claire kept building memories that needed no fame, only truth. Because sometimes all someone really needs is a warm cup of tea, a gaze that listens, and someone who won't walk away when everything falls apart. Time moved gently in the renewed bakery of Maplewood. Flowers still graced the windows, handwritten notes continued to hang from the strings, and soft laughter echoed between the shelves. But now, there was a new stillness in the air. Claire and Nicholas were no longer just the unlikely couple who defied the world. They had become the heart of the town, a living reminder that love doesn't need to be loud to be eternal. And above all, that staying is a daily decision. One morning, Claire woke before the sun and stepped onto the porch. She carried a cup of tea in her hands and thoughts in her heart. She watched Nicholas sleeping on the porch couch, as he often did after reading late into the night. His face was calm, chest rising and falling in the rhythm of someone who had finally found peace. She smiled softly, sat beside him and whispered, "It's still you." Not because she had to, but because she wanted him to know every single day. Later that morning, Nicholas woke to the smell of apple cake in the air. He entered the kitchen and found her humming softly, her back to him, dusting sugar over the top. He walked up and hugged her from behind. "Are you singing?" he asked, smiling. "And you're listening?" she replied, laughing. "That's rare." Nicholas shook his head. "I think I've learned to listen better since you arrived." She answered with a soft kiss, full of ordinary truth. That same day, a little girl left behind a drawing with the words, "Here, the world feels lighter." Claire pinned it at the entrance, right next to the phrase Nicholas had written months ago. They exchanged glances. "You do realize all of this only happened because we chose to stay, right?" "Yes. And every time we could have walked away, we chose to come back." That was it. Their love wasn't made of perfect moments, but of beginnings, again and again. That night, Nicholas cooked dinner, burned the rice, forgot salt in the salad. Claire laughed so hard she fell from her chair. "You're a charming disaster," she said between giggles. He faked offense. Was that a compliment? That was a perfect summary of our marriage. After the laughter came the comfortable silence. They ate what was left and toasted with grape juice in mismatched cups. To this clumsy love, but whole. The following week, they organized a silent letter event. People could write something. They never had the courage to say and drop it into a box. Anonymous or not, all letters would be read aloud by volunteers. Nicholas read notes of pain, forgiveness, unspoken love, and grief for those long gone. Claire, tears in her eyes, embraced whoever needed it. At the end, an elderly woman approached and said, "You made this town feel again." Inspired, Nicholas decided to self-publish a small handcrafted book with his writings from the past year. The title, "Letters Only Silence Understands." Claire illustrated the cover. They sold copies at the bakery. But more important than numbers were the reactions. People cried, laughed, wrote back. Nicholas realized, at last, he had become something he never imagined. Someone who heals through words. On a quiet Sunday afternoon, while arranging a new shelf, Nicholas found the floral napkin from the fair, the first one he had left for her. It was yellowed, but intact. "You kept this all along?" "Always." That's where our story began. He held the napkin carefully. "If I'd known a piece of paper would become our symbol, I'd have folded it better." Claire laughed. "No, it's perfect the way it is. Because it was you trying." As the months passed, the place they built became a haven for those seeking more than comfort, seeking hope. Stories began arriving from other towns. Letters from people who had never stepped inside, yet felt like part of it. Nicholas read every one with misty eyes. "We've created something bigger than us. But it only exists because it's us," Claire replied. Not with pride, just with gratitude. On a rainy night, the power went out. Surrounded by candlelight, Claire and Nicholas sat on the floor, chatting. "If you could say one thing to that lost Nicholas from the fair," she asked, "what would it be?" He thought for a moment. "I'd say hold on. Someone's waiting for you with a cup of tea and a giant heart." Claire held back a laugh. "I'd say to myself, get ready. He'll turn everything upside down, but it'll be worth every second." A year later, the bakery was named one of the most inspiring places in the state. The headline read, "The place where listening became home." Nicholas declined interviews. "Let the place speak for us." But Claire wrote a letter for the paper. "This space isn't about us. It's about everyone who was ever afraid to be who they are, and who found courage the moment they stepped inside." On their wedding anniversary, Nicholas took Claire back to the fair. They sat at the same bench where it all began. He handed her another napkin, carefully folded. Claire opened it gently. Inside, a new phrase. "The love that stays is the one that grows in silence." She smiled. "And you still know how to fold napkins. I learned from you. Everything that matters takes time to learn." That evening, Claire hosted a small dinner with their closest friends. Jenna, grumpy and loyal as ever, raised her glass. Never thought that stranger from the fair would become the man who made Claire stop running. Everyone laughed. Nicholas replied, "And I never imagined someone like her would make me want to stay." The celebration was simple, but full of truth, affection, and shared memories. Later, just the two of them on the porch, Nicholas turned to her. "Do you think love changes over time?" Claire replied, "I think real love matures." It stops shouting and starts whispering. Nicholas rested his head on her shoulder. And if we ever get lost, we begin again. From the same place we always begin. You, me, and a paper flower. A few days later, Claire received the news that her bakery would be honored by the town. But why? She asked, surprised. The mayor answered, because you taught us that what truly transforms the world isn't speed, it's presence. That night, Nicholas hugged her tight. See? And you thought you were just baking cakes. She smiled. But every slice carried a piece of what I believed in. And I ate every one. One evening, Nicholas wrote in his journal, I don't know if the world will remember us someday. But if it does, I hope it won't be for the scandal, nor for the fame. I hope they remember the flower on a napkin, the girl who offered tea, and the man who, one day, learned that love isn't something you find. Love is something you learn to stay for. And he stayed. Nicholas stayed. After all the doubts, headlines, fears, and silences, he stayed. Not because it was easy, but because it was real. Because the greatest declaration of love he could ever offer Claire wasn't a ring or a speech. It was consistency. It was being there every morning, brewing coffee, washing trays, listening to stories, choosing to love. Claire stayed too, even when she doubted, even when she feared she'd be less than his last name. She stayed because she saw who he truly was when no one else did. And she chose the man, not the title, the gesture, not the promise, the truth, not the ideal. She knew their love wasn't perfect, but it was whole. Together, they made the ordinary sacred, the routine poetic, and the silence a song. Nicholas and Claire taught the town and themselves that love doesn't need spectacle. It needs presence and people brave enough to become home for each other day after day. And so, this story doesn't end with a happily ever after. It ends with a we're still here, where love chose to stay, where it learned to remain, where, even without grand gestures, everything was built with what matters most: truth, presence, and a warm slice of cake. If this story touched something quiet inside you, if it reminded you that true love doesn't need grand promises, just presence and courage to stay, like the video, share it with someone who believes in love, and subscribe now to the channel. Because here, every story is a reminder that love lives in the simple gestures, that home is made of those who remain, and that starting over is always possible, even after all the goodbyes. When you subscribe, you're not just helping these stories go further. You're claiming your front row seat to the next reunion, the next healing, the next folded flower that changes everything. We'll see you in the next story. And until then, never forget, real love learns to stay.